So each and every week, we're joined by attorney Keith McManus from McManus Estate Planning, and he's been a valuable resource to us and our clients for quite a while now. And really, we want to always provide you continuing education and information as it relates to estate planning. And today, one of the common questions that we get here at SHP Financial from folks like yourself is, what are the differences between a revocable and an irrevocable trust? There's a couple different types. And so with that being said, welcome, Keith, to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Derek. I love being here.
And what we're going to talk about in terms of what we see mostly and what we talk about a lot is just a general revocable trust. And I guess really quickly, just what are the differences between a revocable and irrevocable?
Sure. So this is probably one of the most common questions that we hear, or what kind of a trust should I have? People ask. And they know instinctively and by receiving advice that not all trusts are the same. And so there are two basic different types of trusts. There are revocable, sometimes people pronounce it revocable, trusts, and there are irrevocable trusts. In general terms, a revocable trust is one where you can retain ownership and control of the assets in a very direct fashion, and you can make changes to that trust. That would be a revocable type of trust.
And so, Keith, a lot of people that have revocable trusts, they'll have they can even put like a bank account or they can title their accounts in that revocable trust, and they can almost like nothing changed.
Right, only advantages. And generally, you can transfer ownership of assets directly into a revocable trust. Things like real estate and bank accounts and certain investment accounts, that sort of a thing is a typical transfer to a revocable trust. And generally, the purpose of revocable trusts is to avoid probate proceedings and also to provide some level of management of assets. There are other benefits too. So people also are able to create irrevocable trusts. Irrevocable trusts are a little bit of a different creature. Those are trusts that are usually very special purpose. It's often to address an estate tax situation. It's often to protect children who are special needs or receiving means-based government benefits. Or for more detailed management, or to remove assets and remove the value from the estate tax calculation. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting, what a lot of people don't know, is you can have a revocable trust during life that converts to an irrevocable trust upon a person's death. So when people ask that question, sometimes with the right client, you can say, hey, why choose when you can have them both? When you can have the benefits of a revocable trust while you're alive and well, and that trust then becomes irrevocable when the person passes away.
Now, Keith, how irrevocable is an irrevocable trust?
That was my question.
I mean, because sometimes, I've heard different things where, well, you still have some control because you can, you can choose who your third-party trustee is or remove that individual. I mean,
right.
I want to make sure what I'm hearing is right.
Yeah, so there's hundreds of different variations of both revocable and irrevocable trusts. So in general terms, it's really hard to say how irrevocable any particular irrevocable trust is without actually reading the document and seeing it. But there is some malleability to these trusts. So without getting overly technical, sometimes you can do things called decanting the trust. You can take an irrevocable trust and sort of pour it into another similar irrevocable trust with slightly different terms to it. So in general, though, the basic advice is if the trust is designed not to be changed and is designed to be irrevocable or immovable, then it generally should remain that way, absent some kind of really pressing circumstance.
So if I'm a listener and I'm listening, trying to figure out what trust would benefit me and why, an irrevocable trust, one of the downsides that I think of quickly is it's irrevocable. Like, what if I want to sell my house and it's owned in the irrevocable trust? Can I do that? What if I have an asset owned in that account? How do I make decisions on that account?
Right. So that's why you be very, very careful when creating irrevocable trusts, and why the vast majority of clients that we see decide upon one or more forms of revocable trust. And often these revocable trusts will still be able to capture a lot of the benefits of an irrevocable trust, but typically upon the person passing away.
And why would somebody want an irrevocable trust after, from a revocable to an irrevocable upon death?
Well, it's for a few reasons, Keith. So number one reason is we want to make sure that your intentions for the money and for the assets that are passing through the trust are respected. We don't want people changing the trust around after you've passed away. We also want to be able to take advantage of the tax code, and parts of the tax code are restricted to irrevocable trusts, and we're able to address things like estate taxes and so forth with some level of irrevocability. or to protect children who are special needs or people who are special needs that are receiving benefits, that you can only harvest those benefits when operating with an irrevocable trust. So it can get a little confusing, but the best thing to do is to come on in and have an appointment so we know exactly what kind of trust and what kind of trust arrangement to set up. The interesting thing is that only 21% of people have trusts in the United States right now.
Really?
Yeah, it's a very low number, and or you could look at it as, gosh, that's about 1 out of every 5.
Yes. So sorry to interrupt, Keith. So basically, 80% of the population will be going through the probate courts.
Oh,
and
yeah.
all of that, all the delays and the publicity that comes with it.
It's awful, and it's very easy to avoid that and to establish a trust. One thing to bear in mind if you're hearing this is that trusts are not just for the super wealthy. They're not these complicated plans. They're things that we can make easily understood and easily implement for estates of all sizes.
Well, Keith, we just recorded a video series of the SHP video series that we do each and every month or so, and we talked about building a trust or a revocable trust. A lot of people just think, oh, it avoids probate, but there's also tax benefits potentially. There's, like you said, being able to protect benefits potentially for the next generation for means-based programs. There's a lot more that goes into a trust than just avoiding probate.
Absolutely there is. And, just using it as something to mention to clients, they need to look at all of those reasons. Avoiding probate is absolutely a major reason for pretty much any estate size. It's not a great idea to move through a probate litigation process if it's easily avoided. But also addressing taxes, managing money for children, making sure that no one's changing around someone's designs for the estate plan afterwards. Those are all very valuable things to do.
Well, I had a call with someone last week, and I was mentioning to them they obviously they really appreciated our retirement roadmap process that looks at income, investment, taxes, healthcare, and legacy as one big plan. And the reason is that they were joking around. They're like, even if we had the best advisor in the world, and he was getting us an extra 1% per year on our investments, but if he left out the estate plan piece, that could be a $300,000 or $400,000 tax bill to the next generation.
It's a huge oversight, and I'm so glad you do that. SHP has a focus upon making sure that assets and an inheritance pass from generation to generation without being diminished by the court system or attorneys or taxes. But bear in mind that with the right kind of trust, we're also able to make sure that the client still owns and controls those assets.
So if you're listening, especially if you don't have a full plan in place, but if you're going to go if you're about to set up a trust, you're interested in setting up a trust, do not do so without meeting with Attorney McManus and his team first, because you have to know the differences between the two so that you can make an educated decision. So each and every week, we're joined by Attorney Keith McManus from McManus